Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord. The story of Peter's conversion, the great catch of fish. Peter's initial response, depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord. He has encountered the holiness of God. Jesus' response, do not be afraid. Henceforth you will be catching men. And Peter leaves everything to follow Jesus. Of course, the conversion here is only the beginning for Peter. There are some bumps in the road. He confesses Jesus to be Christ, and then immediately tries to correct Jesus when he teaches that the Christ must suffer and be put to death. He doesn't want Jesus to wash his feet at the Last Supper. And most of all, he denies Jesus 3 times in the courtyard of the high priest. The conversion is the beginning, not the end. But it is the beginning. But suppose, just suppose, Peter said, depart from me, O Lord, for I am a sinful man. No, Lord, I really mean it. Go away. I have other things that I have to do. I can't just up and go and leave my wife, my mother-in-law, all these fish. My mother-in-law is going to tell my wife, see, I told you so. He wasn't reliable. First, this guy comes along and off he goes. Of course, shortly after this, his mother-in-law gets sick and Jesus heals her, so she understands that Peter was right to go and follow him. God takes care of mothers-in-law. But there are reasons why Peter might not follow. When Isaiah has his vision of heaven, the Lord exalted, woe is me, for I am a man of sinful lips, and I dwell amongst a people of sinful lips. Isaiah could have said, I don't want to be a prophet. Instead of saying, here am I, send me, here am I, send someone else. Essentially what Moses said on Sinai when God appeared to him, send someone else. There's a pattern here. Paul, perhaps most of all, when Jesus appears to him on the road to Damascus and he is 3 days blind, during which Jesus shows him what he must suffer, what he must go through if he is to follow him, if he is to be his apostle. Paul could well have said, well, Lord, how about a deal? If you give me my sight back, I'll stop persecuting you. I'll never say anything bad about you again, but let's just call it quits there. We'll call it even. Conversion isn't easy. There are real reasons, some of them worldly, some of them selfish, why we may not accept God's calling. But God knows that there are obstacles to be overcome. And he deals first with the big obstacle, sin. Paul got his sight back and was baptized for sin. Isaiah has his mouth touched with the burning coal from the altar to cleanse his lips. Must have been painful. Peter, at the great catch of fish, has Jesus' word. Follow me. Implicit, yes, that he will deal with the sin that Peter perceives and will keep Peter away from him. That's the point of following him, to deal with the sin. So God calls, and God provides. He gives us what we need to answer the call. Humility is essential on our part. There's, of course, the danger. God is calling me. There must be something great about me. But no, that's not the normal reaction. The normal reaction is, I am a man of unclean lips. Depart from me, for I am a sinner. That should be our initial response as well. We're not worthy of the calling that you give to us, O Lord. We need to remember that unworthiness. One of the ways that God helps us with that is by reminding us from time to time of the ways in which we've messed up in the past. We shouldn't dwell on that, but it helps us to remember that the calling is by the mercy, the power of God, the compassion, the love that he has for us, for each of us, to give us a particular calling to conversion in him. The humility is essential if we are to follow out that calling. Peter got into trouble precisely at the point where he relied on himself. I'll never deny you, Christ. I know myself. I'm strong. I don't need to fear that. Peter needed to be humbled if he was to fulfill the rest of what he needed to do. St. Paul had the memory of having been a persecutor of the church, of Jesus. And thus how great was Jesus' compassion to him, to take him from persecuting to serving. Our calling as Christians begins, but does not end with the conversion. It must be lived out. It lived out in our unworthiness of the calling, of God's mercy, to having brought us to himself. But at the same time, not dwelling on that unworthiness, because that too can be a sort of pride that says, you know, if only I had been better, I could serve him better now. Well, God doesn't need that. He provides for all that is needed. So, remember not just your unworthiness, but remember what God has done for you. He has taken you to himself. He has adopted you as his child. He loves you this day, whether you are worth it or not, and you're not. But it is the generosity of his gift to raise us to the vision of heaven. So trust Jesus. He knows what he's doing when he says, fear not, follow me.